Good morning, class 10 students. I welcome you all on this online platform provided by Jagrati Classes. We were doing chapter 8 of class 10th, so we'll be continuing with the same chapter, and in the previous class we have discussed vegetative propagation. I told you what are the advantages of the method of vegetative propagation. The major advantage of this method was the plants which do not produce seeds, or we can say the plants which have lost the capacity to produce the seeds, we can also propagate those plants using this method, that is vegetative propagation. So this video is for class 10th and we are doing chapter 8, how do organisms reproduce. And the topic for this class would be vegetative propagation. So vegetative propagation, giving you a quick revision, it is a method in which we do not use the reproductive parts of the flower or the plant. In turn, we use all the vegetative parts to reproduce or to propagate the plant. So this vegetative propagation can be divided into two categories, that is natural vegetative propagation, and the next you have artificial vegetative propagation methods. Natural is when you use certain parts of the plant, that is root, stems and leaf, and you just pluck out a leaf and dig it in the soil, and after some time you observe that a new plant is being emerged. So such methods of vegetative propagation are called the methods of natural vegetative propagation, where we directly use the roots, stems or the leaves of the plant and we just put them in the soil, give them favorable conditions like continuous watering, particular amount of heat, sunlight, shade, then these parts are capable to produce a new plant. Such methods are known as natural vegetative propagation techniques, but these are only applicable for certain plants, that is a very small number of plants. Then you have the next methods which are called the artificial method, and these methods include cutting, the next one is layering, then you have one more method which is known as grafting, and then you can take as an example tissue culture. So you have been given the name of these methods in your books and the examples, but we'll be discussing in brief how we perform these methods. So cutting, this is very commonly observed in rose plant, that is for propagating any rose plant you can take a stem cutting, and then the stem cutting of the rose plant is put in the soil and provided with water and every particular favorable conditions. Then you will observe that from the stem cutting of the rose plant you can grow a new plant. And this what vegetative propagation means, that is by using vegetative parts when we propagate or grow any new plant, this method is known as vegetative propagation. So the first one, that is cutting, it is commonly observed in rose plants. The next you have the method of layering, and this method layering, it is commonly observed in jasmines. For growing this jasmine plant, what we have is, let's suppose you have jasmine plant, then the branches or the stems of this new jasmine plant is quite flexible. So what we do is, we bend this stem of the jasmine plant and we put it in the soil. And once you put this stem of any jasmine plant or any other plant which can be grown by layering into the soil, after some time you will notice that the part of jasmine part which is covered or layered with soil, it would develop adventitious roots below the ground or under its surface, and in turn when you separate or cut off this branch, this would grow into a new jasmine plant. And these methods are included in the process of layering. Then you have the third method, which is grafting. This is also useful for rose, jasmines, grapes and bananas. How you perform grafting is, you take two parts, one from the root system and the next one from the shoot system, that is the stem system. We have also discussed this method in the previous video. Just I am giving you a recap. From the root system of one plant, you take a portion, and this portion is known as the stalk part. Next, the second portion which we are taking from other plant belonging to the shoot system or the stem system, this is known as scion. And then after obtaining this stalk and scion, what we do is we tie them together, or these are grafted together, tied very close. After some time we notice that these two different parts, they get attached with each other, even their tissues and all the vascular bundles present in these plants, that is the stalk and scion. They both get integrally attached or interiorly attached with each other, and then you have a single new plant formed from the two different parts of the plant you took. So this method is called grafting. Let's suppose you take the stalk of a rose plant which had white colored roses, and then you took a scion part which had pink color roses, and when you graft them together, you tie it with a cloth, and if you are successful, then both these stalk and scion would join together, they would combine integrally also, and then you will get the plant which shows both the traits, that is pink and white roses you will get on your single rose plant. So this is the advantage of grafting method. The next technique here is tissue culture. Tissue culture is a technique in which we take tissues from certain parts of the plant. From some parts of the plant, let's suppose you have any plant, you can take the tissues from this plant, and then these tissues are being cultured or grown in the laboratory in controlled environmental, in the controlled laboratory conditions, and then whenever the new plant arises, that is when the roots and the shoot system gets developed, then you transfer the new plantlets to the garden or through the external environment. This technique is called tissue culture, that is culturing or growing the tissues taken from any part of the plant in the laboratories, and after few hours or after some time or some days actually, whenever new short plantlets grow out, these plantlets are planted in the external environment. So this tissue culture method is also responsible for growing numerous number of plants, large number of plants in a very short time. So these are some of the methods of vegetative propagation which I told you I would be discussing in the next class. So this is the summary, and now we have completed vegetative propagation. Then the next heading given in your books is spore formation, reproduction by the method of spore formation. And the common example is Rhizopus. It is also known as bread mold. And I think if you have seen a rotten bread in your homes or anywhere, you might have seen this Rhizopus. Some thread-like network forms on the bread in form of patches. This, let's suppose you have a loaf of bread with you, and here some thread-like patches form on the bread. So these thread-like patches are the colony of this Rhizopus, and Rhizopus is commonly known as bread mold. So if I try to find the structure, what is the actual structure? It is even given in the CBSE textbooks. Okay, this type of structure is drawn. So this is the structure of Rhizopus, that is the thread-like network which you observe on your breads. Okay, this is a microscopic, so we cannot see the whole structure here. When we observe this under the microscope, you observe a similar kind of structure. Now these stalks, or you can say these stem-like or thread-like portion, these are known as hypha. And the globular sac-like structures, these are known as sporangia. This is the structure of Rhizopus, the bread mold. It has a stalk-like structure, the hyphae are the stalk-like or stem-like structure, and then you have a globular bag-like structure which is known as sporangia. Inside these sporangia, you have very tiny circular structure which are known as spores. So inside sporangia, you have hundreds and thousands of spores contained. So these are the tiny spores, and these spores are responsible for production of new rhizopus, that is for reproduction. Whenever in under favorable conditions, what happens, this sporangia, which is your bag-like structure, it bursts open, and once the sporangia burst open, okay, once the sporangia burst, all these spores are liberated to the nearby surroundings, and these spores, once they get favorable conditions, that is they get enough moisture, then they grow into a new rhizopus there. So each spore is capable of growing into a new rhizopus. Then you will imagine, if each spore is responsible or is capable to grow into a new rhizopus, why do you have so much of spores? Because every spore would not get favorable conditions. Only some of the spores from such large number of spores get the favorable condition, and then they germinate when they get moisture, soil, everything. So they germinate and they form a new rhizopus. So this is again a type of asexual reproduction which is observed in multicellular lower organisms. Remember, rhizopus here is a multicellular organism, but it is a primitive, that is less developed organism here. So this is rhizopus, and this is the mode of reproduction. Other than rhizopus, there are many other multicellular organisms, that is the primitive organisms, which reproduce by spore formation. So many plants and animals are or use the method of spores used for reproducing, for reproduction, and this I hope you understood. So with this we have completed the topic of asexual reproduction in animals and plants. In vegetative propagation on page number 132, a diagram is also made of a leaf which is known as bryophyllum. It is again important, and question comes, the leaf of bryophyllum is in this manner. Okay, the leaf of bryophyllum has this sort of structure, and it is asked how bryophyllum reproduces or how vegetative propagation occurs in bryophyllum. So we say that at the leaf margin, what are the important points? You have to remember, at the leaf margin of bryophyllum leaf, you have certain notches. Notches are these parts. These are the notches. And in these notches, small bryophyllum buds develop. The bryophyllum buds get developed on the notches. That is, small buds form, which after few days, they developed roots and the leaves. And in turn, these grown out buds, when they grow out to a certain height, they get detached from the parent plant, and when they fall into the soil after getting favorable adequate conditions, they germinate and form a new bryophyllum plant. So this technique of bryophyllum, that is growing bryophyllum, is very important, and it is very useful because you can get many plants of bryophyllum from just a single leaf, and it is also less time consuming. All the advantages of vegetative reproduction, that vegetative reproduction is less time consuming, it produces large number of offsprings, it is again a kind of asexual reproduction which you have with you, and then the different types of methods used by different plants and animals. This completes your asexual reproduction, that is the first half of the chapter. Now we'll be starting with sexual reproduction. Then, what do you mean by this term sexual reproduction? When two parents are involved or are responsible for reproducing, such kind of reproduction are called sexual reproduction. Then I already discussed with you in detail the difference between asexual and sexual. So we'll be not discussing in detail again this sexual reproduction. Some of the points were that in these two parents are involved, it is a complex process, not as simple compared to asexual one. Then less number of offsprings are produced, but they have high survival rate. During sexual reproduction, you have the formation of gametes. Gametes are also known as germ cells. So during this kind of reproduction, gametes are being formed. Then the organisms undergoing sexual reproduction, they have specialized modified reproductive organs which are required for reproduction. So these every comparative point we dealt when in the introductory class. Now we will be studying sexual reproduction in both plants and animals, as we studied asexual in the plants as well as in animals. So starting with sexual reproduction in plants. Then for this you have to know that reproductive part of the plant, is flower. Okay, you can say that flower is the reproductive part of any plant, and in this flower you have different things. You all have studied the structure of flower in your junior classes. You can even see the diagram of flower which is being very beautifully made in the NCERT textbooks. So a flower, the different parts of the flower can be categorized or divided in two groups. The first would be the vegetative part and the next one would be the reproductive part. So the vegetative part include the petals, the sepals, okay, of the flower. And the reproductive parts of the flower, that is, you have a male reproductive part in the flower as well as you have a female reproductive part in the flower. The male reproductive part of the flower is known as stamen and the female reproductive part is known as pistil. So these are the different categories or the different parts which are present in the flower. So in flower you have the vegetative part, that is your petals and sepals. We will be discussing each part in detail and some of their functions. So first comes the petals. Petals, you know, give the beauty or the glory to the flower. These are of various colors. So it is the colored part of the flower. And what is the function of petals? These petals, they are colored because they are required to attract the insects towards the flower. Why these insects are needed? For pollination, for the process of pollination. We will be discussing the process, but I hope you know from your junior classes, at least you should have an idea. So the petals are the colored part of the flower. You can say these are the leaf of the flower. And they are responsible for the process of pollination to attract the insects towards the flower. The next part of the flower are the sepals. Now the petals could be differently colored, that is they have different types of colors, but the sepals are usually green in color. These are also the leaf-like parts and their function is the protection of the flower. These sepals are present at the base of flower. If you observe the diagram of flower, you can easily see you have these leaf-like sepals present at the base of the flower, and after this you have the different types of petals. These are the petals which are differently colored. They have the function of pollination, and the sepals, these are present at the base of the flower. They are usually green in color and they provide a base, a support to the flower or to the petals. So these were the functions of petals and sepals. The group of petals is also known as calyx and the group of sepals is also known as corolla. Okay, so these are the scientific term for petals and sepals. Next we have to discuss the reproductive parts of the flower, which is stamen and pistil. So we will be discussing one by one. Then next you have the male reproductive part of flower. And this male reproductive part of flower is known by different names. It is known as androecium. It is also known as stamen. Okay, so androecium and stamen. Then the next part is, what is the structure of this part? If you see in the diagrams, then you can see this sort of structure is being made in the books. Or you can also have this kind of structure. So this is the structure of male reproductive part of the flower. This stalk-like is known as the filament. And then you have this bilobed structure. You can see the two lobes here. So this bilobed structure is known as anther. And anther plus filament, these are combinedly called as stamens, which is your male reproductive part. So male reproductive part is known as androecium. You can call it to be stamen or you can call it to be androecium. It contains two parts. It has a filament-like, it has a stalk-like or stem-like part which is known as filament, and then you have a bilobed part which is known as anther. And inside this anther you have pollen grains. So the interior of this anther is filled with pollen grains here. We can write anther, it contains pollen or pollen grains. And then the important thing, these pollen grains are the male gametes of the plant. Pollen grains are called as male gametes of plant, or you can say of the flower. So this was an account of the male reproductive part of the flower. The male reproductive part of the flower is referred to as androecium or stamen. Now the structure of stamen, I have drawn it. Then this stamen or androecium, it contains two parts. One is the bilobed part, that is a lobular part, anther, and then you have a stalk-like part called filament. Inside these anthers, it contains numerous tiny microscopic pollen grains, and these pollen grains are called the male gametes of the flower or the male gametes of the plant. Now talking about the next, which is your female reproductive part of the flower. This female reproductive part of the flower, it is called as gynoecium, and it is even called pistil in general terms. The structure of this female reproductive part, it has a platform-like structure, then comes a tube-like structure, and then a bag-like or sac-like structure. So this is the structure of pistil, or you can say this is the structure of gynoecium, which is the female reproductive part. This structure can be divided into three parts. The first one is stigma, the next one is known as style, and the last part, that is the globular part, is known as ovary. So if we mark in the diagram, this is your stigma, this tubular tube-like portion is known as style, and the bag-like globular portion is called ovary. This stigma, it secretes some sticky chemicals, so it serves as a landing platform. Stigma serves as a landing platform for pollen grains. Okay, then next comes the tubular part. This is only responsible for the transportation. We will see that these pollen grains, when they land on the stigma, they form a pollen tube, and this pollen tube, it goes through the interior of the style to reach the ovary. So this is the tubular part present in the pistil, and next you have the ovary, which is a very important part. It contains ovules. Ovules later on, when the reproduction occurs, fertilization occurs, then these ovules are responsible for the production of seeds, and this ovary forms your fruit. So this ovary contains ovules within it, and the ovary, one of the ovules, is also known as egg, which is the female gamete. So it contains the female gamete, which is known as egg cell or egg. So this is an account of female reproductive part. Now we'll be doing the types of flowers, and then we'll do pollination. Okay? So you can divide or categorize flower into two kinds. One would be unisexual flowers, and the next one would be bisexual flowers. So unisexual means, uni means one. When you have only one kind of reproductive part present, that is either the female reproductive part is present in the flower or the male reproductive part is present. Either the female reproductive part or you have a male reproductive part present. So such flowers are known as unisexual flowers, whereas bisexual flowers, they contain both reproductive parts, that is male part and the female part. So for example, mustard is an example of bisexual flowers. The flowers of mustard are bisexual, that is the single flower contains both the male reproductive part and female reproductive part. A male reproductive part is your androecium or stamen, and the female part is known as gynoecium or pistil. So when both stamen and pistil are present on the same flower, such flowers are known as bisexual, whereas when you have either stamen or pistil present on a single flower, then such flowers are known as unisexual flowers. The example for this would be papaya. Then watermelon is also an example. Here you can take the example of hibiscus flower, that is China rose, okay? So this was an account of types of flowers. Now we will be doing a topic, pollination. So you have this process, pollination. What do you mean by the term pollination? So let's write its definition first. Pollination, it is a process of transfer of pollens. Pollen means pollen grains. It is a process of transfer of pollen grains. From pollen grains are present where? If you remember, we have pollen grains inside the anther. So anther contains pollen grains, and pollen grains are the microscopic tiny structures which may have different shapes. So it is a process of transfer of pollen grains from the anther, and these pollen grains, when the anther bursts open, these pollen grains are being liberated, and these are then carried away by wind, water or insects, and they land on the female reproductive part, that is the stigma. So these pollen grains, they travel from the anther. Pollen grains which are present in the anther, when the anther bursts open, these travel from the anther to the stigma or your female reproductive part, that is pistil. So pollination is the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma by the means of wind, water or insects, etc. So this process is known as pollination, that is, it is the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma by means of wind, water, insects or any other agents. Now this pollination can be of different types, that is, you have two types of pollination. The first one would be self-pollination, and the next one would be cross-pollination. Self-pollination means when the anther and the stigma, both these reproductive part are present on the same flower, on a single flower, and then transfer of pollen grains occur from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, then you call such pollination to be self-pollination. So self-pollination means transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of the same flower, and same plant. So this is known as the process of self-pollination, when the transfer of pollen grains occur from the same flower of the same plant. Whereas cross-pollination, when the transfer of pollen grains occur from the anther to the stigma of different flowers. So cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma of different flowers. Okay, so these are the two ways of pollination, that is self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination, it generally occurs in bisexual flowers. Because in bisexual flowers, you have both the male and female reproductive part on the same flower. So this kind of pollination occurs in bisexual flowers, different flowers of same plant. Then this type of cross-pollination, it occurs in unisexual flowers. We have written same plant here because the flowers might be unisexual, that is, let's suppose you have a plant A, okay, and you have 10 species of this plant A. In these 10 species, some of the plants would have the female reproductive part and the next plants would have the male reproductive part in them. But the plant would be same, and this also we'll be dealing with in the next classes, that why I am writing here the same plant. Such pollens which belong to the same type of plant, they are called compatible pollens. That is, these type of pollens are allowed to germinate when they come on stigma or when they land on stigma. While if any other pollen comes from a different plant or a different variety of plant, all the pollens cannot germinate on this stigma, and these pollens are known as incompatible pollens. So we have written same plant here, and this is again a very important term, that cross-pollination, it involves transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of different flowers. Because we are talking about unisexual flowers, that is, the flowers either contain the female reproductive part or the male reproductive part, and hence they are known as unisexual. But they should belong to the same plant. That is, if you are taking any plant, if you are taking the watermelon plant, which is an example of unisexual flowers, then we can say that some plants of the watermelon will have the female reproductive system, that is pistil in them, and the next other plants would contain stamens, which are the male reproductive part. But the plant should be of watermelon. If any other pollens from any other plants, if the hibiscus pollen land on this watermelon stigma, then they would not germinate, because such kind of pollens are known as incompatible pollens. So I hope these diagrams are well clear, and then we did the two kinds of flowers which you have with you, unisexual and bisexual. Now we will be starting with double fertilization, or in simpler terms, we will be doing reproduction in plants. So this kind of reproduction which we will be starting, it is a kind of sexual reproduction in plants, because it involves the formation of gametes, or we can say it involves two parents here. So then this is a kind of sexual reproduction in plants, and this type of reproduction, it occurs in the reproductive part, which is your flower, or we can say it involves both male and female reproductive parts. And as we discussed earlier, this male reproductive part is known as stamen, or you can also call it to be androecium, and the female reproductive part, it is called as pistil. The other name given to the pistil is gynoecium. So whenever this kind of reproduction involves both the male and female reproductive part, that is your stamen and pistil. So the first step in reproduction would be the same which we discussed now, pollination. Because for reproduction, we require that the pollen grains from the anther must reach the stigma, which is your landing platform. So pollination, it is the first step required for reproduction. Then after pollination, whenever the compatible pollen or the pollens from the male part would be received by the stigma, then these pollens would germinate on the stigma. So after pollination, the compatible pollens germinate on stigma. That is, the pollen grains which move, or when the anther bursts open, the pollen grains are released onto the environment. Now these pollen grains would be carried away by the biotic and abiotic factors. Abiotic means non-living factors like wind and water. If the pollen grains are sticky, they might be carried away by the water. If the pollen grains are very light, then these are carried away by the wind currents. And once these pollen grains land or get embedded on the stigma, then they undergo germination. Germination means this is the stigma or the landing platform which you have, and the pollen grains which come on the stigma. Many types of pollen grains, that is the pollen grains belonging to different plants, can land on the stigma. But only, as I told you earlier, the compatible pollens, that is the correct pollen, would germinate. We suppose that this is the pistil or the male part of plant X, and then on the stigma of this plant you have different pollen grains. Some of the pollen grains belong to the plant X, while the rest pollen grains belong to different plants, that is either to the plant A and to the plant B. Only these two pollen grains belonging to the same plant, that is belonging to the plant X, would undergo germination. Other pollens would not be allowed or permitted by this stigma to undergo germination. So we can say that the stigma allows only certain pollen grains to germinate and it does not permit the other pollen grains to form the pollen tube. It means it allows only some selective pollen grains which belong to the same plant to undergo germination. Germination means this pollen grain would form a pollen tube, and it disallows or does not permits the other kind of pollen grains to form the pollen tube. Now once it is allowing only certain pollen grains to germinate or form a pollen tube, we'll observe that other pollens which are present on the stigma, they get destroyed, and only among these two, the most compatible or the most favorable pollen would be allowed to germinate. So if we say that this is your most compatible pollen grain, so only this X pollen grain would be required to germinate. And once it germinates, you will observe that this forms a narrow, thin, tube-like structure which goes through the stigma and through the tissues of the style. This structure is known as pollen tube. So germination means whenever the compatible pollen lands on stigma and then it gets favorable response from the stigma, it forms a pollen tube. And in this pollen tube, we have two types of male gametes present inside this. So now this is enough for today's class. We will be continuing with this. This is again a very important topic, and then we will be discussing after plants, we will be discussing the reproduction or sexual reproduction in humans, and then we will be completing with our chapter how do organisms reproduce. Till then, I hope you have understood this lesson. Please do revise all the concepts and keep following us. If you have any sort of query, you can ask us anytime. Thank you for joining the class today. Stay home, stay safe.